Starting all over again is gonna be rough on us, but we're gonna make it. It's Breakfast with Bob.
Joe, man, we miss seeing you, buddy. We're here almost at Huggers on the Rocks. My name is Bob Babbitt. This is Breakfast with Bob, not quite Kona edition. We are brought to you by Hoka One One, Credo Tri, Four Seasons Hualalai, Challenge Daytona, Form Goggles, Canyon Bikes, Normatec, Amp Human, VeloFix, UCAN, and our Challenge Athletes Foundation. Our next guest, probably the hottest triathlete on the planet leading into COVID, Mr. Joe Skipper. How you doing, Joe?
I'm good, thanks. Bit colder here than what it normally is when I'm in Kona with you.
just a little bit. Hey, so Joe, when I look at the end of this last season, well, 6th in Kona, and then you follow that up by going to Florida, and what an epic race you had down there. You win Florida, break the course record, and then kick off this season going to Taupo and breaking the course record there. What the heck? Talk a little bit about how the end of the season went and the beginning of this season. And did you feel that there was something coming, that you were about to have this big breakthrough?
That's a good question. Well, I think I got in a really good training block going into Kona. And 6th place for me there was a good result. Like, it was a step up from last year. And I think it was a slightly stronger field last year because I think some of the guys were missing the year before. So although it was only one position higher, it was probably a better race. And then after Kona, coming back, I felt pretty good. I mean, in my sessions before Kona, I knew the power numbers were pretty decent on the bike. I think that helped because I was injured earlier in the year, so I couldn't run, so I could only swim and bike. So I was getting some really good volume in on the bikes and good sessions. So I knew the numbers were looking good. Going into like Kona, and obviously that translated into Florida, and then the run form came back pretty quick. So that obviously I could see that coming. And also I think having coached myself and knowing what kind of works well for you, just years of training and slightly tweaking it and just keeping the consistency year on year. I mean, if you look at my results up until say this year, I'd had a lot of seconds and thirds. Mm-hmm. But it was just getting that little bit better where instead of you're turning them seconds and thirds into first places, and like the consistency was always there before. It was just that I was consistently a second or third place finisher and not a first place. So it's just a bit fitter and then keeping the consistency what I'd had in years previous to that.
You know, it's one thing to go when you have a race in Florida and you go as fast as you went and go 7:46. It's another thing when you got Ben Hoffman running a 2:36 marathon off the bike, and you had to run a 2:39 basically to win the race. I mean, you only won by 2 minutes. Could you feel that guy coming?
Yeah, well, it's quite funny because when I started the run, I saw Laura and I said to her, what's the gap? I think it might have been at the start of the run because I think she was checking it. And I said, what's the gap? And she said like 8 minutes or something like that, or 6. It must have been 6 minutes. And then I looked at the first turn and it was down to 3, and I thought it couldn't have been like effing 8 minutes or 7 minutes. I thought she must have got that wrong. There's no way he could have took 3 minutes out of me in the first 10K or whatever. And then I could see and then like obviously after the race, looking back, I could see that it was right. He did just start off so quick, but yeah, I mean, I'm really surprised that I managed to hold him off. To be honest, like the fact that he ran a 2:36, and I needed to run. I did a 2:39 low, I think, but it could have been a 2:38. But you're celebrating at the end and stuff like that. It was a few seconds over, so basically a really low 2:39. And I think if I'd have been a minute slower, he would have caught me, because once he knew that he wasn't going to catch me, he kind of eased off a bit. But for me, up until I got to 20 miles, and I remember getting my split on my watch, and I went through 20 miles in bang on 2 hours. I think it might have been slightly under, so like 2:37 pace, and he was catching me all the time. I kind of kept him pegged a bit, I think, didn't lose too much from 20K to 30K. But then, and I thought, all right, I've got this in the bag now. I think I had about a 2 minute lead. I thought 10Ks to go. I thought, like, I'm running 6 minute mile, and like, there's no way he can go any quicker. So I kind of took my foot off the gas a bit, and the lead went down to about a minute and 20. And people gave me splits, and they said minute 20. I thought, oh my God, I thought he's gonna catch me. And then it was really hard because I had to just completely dig in. And really give it everything for like, in my head, I said, give it everything for 2 miles. And if you get to the last mile with a minute lead, you know, if you can kind of peg him where it is, then he's never going to catch you for a minute in the last mile, because you'll get the boost and your adrenaline will be able to take you through. But yeah, he really made me work for that. And it took probably my best ever performance to beat him.
Yeah, no question. Because the reality is, if you run a 2:41 marathon, which is awesome, you lose. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I would have lost if it was a 2:40, because I think had he been able to see me at that point, I would have been like 50 seconds slower. And if I was on 2:40 pace, he would have, he would have seen me 30 seconds ahead, and that would have been it. That would have been like a red rag to a bull. But because he couldn't see me and he knew, 2 miles left, I can't see him, he was probably getting split, saying a minute and 32 minutes. And he probably thought, well, I'm not going to catch that in the last mile. But it was hard for me because I wasn't getting accurate splits from people, because I was asking people for splits. And obviously the people that were just spectators didn't know, because I was getting to them first. And I asked people on the motorbike from Ironman, and they were like, we can't tell you. And I said, come on, like, he's going to be getting splits off everyone. Like, I need to know what's going on, right? Because you only get every 10K is the only time you get to see what's going on behind you. So like, I got 10K, I could see where he was, and I could see at 20K, but a lot happens from 20K to like 35Ks into the marathon, isn't it? That's when it's make or break. So it was really hard to know what was going on. I was just kind of running in fear, I guess.
The interesting part is when you're leading, it is really hard to get splits, right? Because people see you go by, and that's when they start to watch to give the second place guy splits. And you until somebody's on you. I remember one time Chris Lieto was leading a 70.3 Coeur d'Alene, and he's running along. He tells the cyclist with him, just, hey, give me a heads up if somebody's coming. And all of a sudden, the guy goes, oh, crap. And Craig Alexander's like 5 feet behind him. He didn't know until he was on it. I was like, you could have given me a little bit of heads up. He's like, no. Was it type of course where you can see him, or are you really flying blind?
You're absolutely flying blind. The only time literally you got to see him was at the turns. And then even at the halfway turn, it was kind of like a little triangle you did. So he kind of came onto the triangle as I was then leaving. So I did get a split, but if it had been like 10 seconds or 15 seconds later, I wouldn't have seen him, and I'd have been like, oh God, like, where is he? But also I got a split from some kid who was watching it, and she said, he's right behind you. That was about a mile to go. And I quickly had a little look behind me, and I couldn't really see, but I thought, God, is he there? Like, has he closed the gap to me? So then I really gave it everything from about a mile to go for about about half a mile, to be honest, as long as I could. I tried to up it with everything, because in my head, I thought he was literally right behind me, 20 seconds behind me or something, because people were giving me funny splits. I think she got confused, and it was like another athlete on the course, and she was telling me it, and I thought it was Ben she was on about. So I was like, bloody hell, he's like took another minute out of me. Like, he's really flying.
So usually when somebody finishes Kona and has a race like you had, and Ben, right? Ben had a great race too. It was like fourth, right? So here you guys are fourth and sixth in Kona. Normally it's time to put your feet up and sort of rest till the next year. So when did you make that decision early on that you were going to do Florida no matter what, or did that come on later?
Well, so the year before, I was seventh in Kona, and I was planning to do Arizona, and I entered Arizona, and that was 5 weeks after Kona, and it turned into a nightmare because I got home, and then after about 2 or 3 weeks, I started feeling a bit tired, and I was like, oh shit, like I've booked everything, I'm going to have to do it now. So I did it, and it turned out to be a nightmare, worst thing ever. And then the next year, which was last year, Florida turned out to be 3 weeks after Kona, and I was like, 3 weeks, that's much better, it's like, you don't really need to do any more training, it's just literally recover from Kona, tick over for like 5 days or a week, and then just take it easy into the race, and it's just one build up. So I'd entered it, and then after Kona, I crossed the line, and I felt absolutely shit. Like, you've been out in the sun for 8 hours, felt horrendous. And I saw Paula at the end, and I said to her, take me off the list for Kona, off Florida. I ain't doing it. She said, see how you feel tomorrow. So give me the days. I don't know if it was either the next day or the day after that. I sent her an email and I said, I'm coming to Florida. Keep me on the list. I'm going to be there. So I made the decision like a day or two later. And it was kind of a bit of a funny one, really, because I wasn't originally, I'd committed to doing a training camp back home in Italy. I think the week after or 2 weeks after Kona. when I was going to be back. So I was at home for about a week or 8 days, then flew to Italy and did this 5-day training camp. And I didn't feel too good when I got there. And we were doing loads of cycling. Like I don't know how much we did, but it was like 3 or 4 hours a day, quite a bit. It was low intensity though, because it was going out with some, age group athletes, and it wasn't too hard. But actually it was quite good because it took my mind off it, and it kind of got me doing some exercise more than what I would normally do. But I mean, it turned out all right, because then I flew from there to Florida, and I felt really good on race day. So I think that just kind of tied me over enough to get a good result. But yeah, back to what you were saying about putting your feet up. I mean, you've only got so many Ironmans you can do in a year. And personally, I think it's much better, instead of spacing them out 3 months apart or something like that, it's a lot better to actually back up with 2 pretty close to each other, because then you can have more downtime after it, and then a better Ironman build up, going into another one. So say if I was like racing early season, I might race 2 in like April or May if I could. But then I can have a couple of weeks to recover, and then I can do 4 months of good quality training, rather than like recovering from one, trying to get 5 weeks in, which isn't really going to take you up a level. It's only going to take you back to where you were before probably, and then doing another taper. So I prefer to do them pretty close together. Ideally 2 or 3 weeks apart. I think that's the ideal. Any more than that, and it's kind of, you've got to try and fit some decent training in.
So when I look at Taupo, that was really, you go 7:54 there and break the course record. But that was probably the last race, right, before COVID killed the rest of the season.
Yeah, last professional Ironman that was. I mean, they've done one in Estonia for age groupers only. And there hasn't been actually they've done Cairns now, Ironman Cairns. But yeah,
Right.
that was basically one of the last races. I think there was a race in Mexico, like a half distance, like a week or 2 later, and then that was it. Nothing until August time, I think it was, so yeah, pretty much I was very lucky to get that in, and I'm so pleased I did, because it didn't feel so bad when there wasn't no racing on for a few months, knowing that you'd managed to get one out of the way and have a good experience, going to New Zealand, racing Challenge Wanaka, racing Ironman New Zealand. It kind of was like, at least I got something in, and then come back and it broke up a bit. Whereas I feel sorry for the guys that trained all winter, were really motivated, looking forward to racing in April, May time, and then everything's cancelled, and they're like, oh shit, I haven't raced for a year now. That would have been really hard.
So talk to me a little bit about deciding to go for the 12-hour record. I mean, I can't think of anything that sounds more painful. And this was just in August, you went 326 miles in 12 hours?
Yeah, officially 325.5 when they did it officially. But I did it the year before as well. So I actually did it last year when I was injured before Kona. But it's actually a lot less painful than doing an Ironman. But what I would say is that it's a lot more mentally challenging than an Ironman. With an Ironman, you do the swim, it breaks it up, you get on the bike, there's people around you, and you've got the tactics involved, as well as working together with people or trying to pull away from people. You're kind of always thinking will this person outrun me? Can I outrun them? And that kind of shapes the way you race. And it's a lot more to think about. Whereas the 12-hour, because it's in time trial format, you don't really see any other athletes on the course. It's hard to know whether or not you're ahead of people. And it's like a battle against yourself. And with an Ironman, the faster you finish, the quicker it's over with. Whereas the 12-hour, no matter how quick you go or how slow you go, you're out there for 12 hours by yourself, riding up and down. And yeah, mentally, it's just absolutely soul destroying. Physically, running an Ironman is what really takes it out of you. And you feel a lot, the day after an Ironman, you're struggling to walk. The day after a 12-hour, you feel a bit ropey, but you're not that bad, really.
So I look at the event Challenge Daytona coming up. And if somebody's ready to go hard and time trial on a track right now, it would be Joe Skipper, based on going, averaging 27 miles an hour for 325.5 miles. Are you planning to come to that?
Yeah, I'm definitely planning on coming to Daytona, definitely. The thing is with the bike course there, though, is it's going to be hard to take big chunks at a time with everyone, because like you said, the speed's going to be quick on that track. So if someone's only going 28 miles an hour and you go 30 miles an hour, the time you take out of people every mile is so small. Whereas if it was actually a more challenging course, a few ups and downs, technical sections, it would be much harder to make the time. So it's going to be a tough one for me to do really well in, because everyone will be riding so fast. But I'll definitely be there, and I'm training hard for it to give it my best shot. So I'm going to come out there and hopefully have a good race.
Do you feel right now that you're in the best shape of your life, or actually after New Zealand, if you look at those 3 performances back to back to back, that's you look at those as the 3 best performances you've ever had?
Yeah, probably. Like they're probably the best performances I've ever had. Trying to think if there's any other ones. I mean, I think Kona was like an okay performance. It's just, for me, I really struggle in the heat. So
Yeah.
I always kind of finish the race in Kona knowing that I haven't raced my potential. I mean, I gave it everything on the day, but I just know that I lose so much time on the run. It's quite frustrating because I've run under 240, 2 or 3 times now, under 245 loads, but just in that heat in Kona, I just really struggle. So it's always like a kind of like bittersweet. It's like good that you're towards the pointy end, but it's quite frustrating that you really struggle and lose time. But I mean, that's kind of the beast, isn't it? And a lot of people take a lot of years to do well. I mean, I remember talking to Bart Ennetts after he got second, and I said, wow, like how did you get second? Like, because you've been coming here for years, like what made the difference? And he basically just said it was experience, coming out here year after year and just getting a bit better every year. And you just, I don't know, learn stuff and you just cope with the heat better. I think having an understanding of how bad the heat actually is out in Kona really helps. But going back to being in the best shape of my life, to be honest, in New Zealand, I felt like I was in good, decent shape, but I felt like I could have been a lot better in the middle of the year, because I didn't start training until December for it. So I did December, January training, and then 2 weeks of February or 3 weeks of February, and then I started tapering. So I'd only done 11 weeks training, whereas I was using it as a building block because I know having a race at the start of March massively motivates you for winter training, especially in Europe. The weather's terrible. And if you've got a race in March, once you get to New Year, you can't mess around. You're kind of thinking, right, I'm doing an Ironman in 8 or 9 weeks' time. So it gets you focused and it kind of really gives you a good springboard going into the summer season because you're already quite fit in March or April. So I was actually building up for Challenge Roth and looking forward to taking on all the top guys there. Like I know Jan was racing keenly and I was going full steam ahead for that. Like that was what I was going to be 100% in. All the big names racing in European conditions, not Kona conditions, where I know I'll be able to run sub 240. I thought that's going to be the one where I will look to take them down, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. But next year, if they're all there, I'll be there.
So you're already qualified for Kona, so you don't have to worry about chasing any other wins. So you can focus on Challenge Daytona, Challenge Roth, and Kona.
Yeah, definitely. Although I'll throw in a couple of others because I can't help myself.
I look at your schedule, and the list of how many Ironmans have you done now?
I've lost count ages ago, too many. It's probably going to have taken a couple of years off my life, put it that way.
Yeah. So when you look back, Joe, what do you look at as your toughest moment in racing?
What in general, or in one race in one race in particular?
That sticks out to you is that was a sort of a low point for me.
Probably Kona in 2016 when I wasn't as fit as what I wanted to be, and I had a terrible race, and I just kind of blew up a bit on the bike and ended up suffering in at the back. Yeah, that was probably mentally bad because you've seen the race go ahead and you just you wanted to be up there, but you just weren't good enough on the day. In terms of actual suffering in a race, Texas 2015, I needed a good result that year. The heat, that was my first time racing in the heat and humidity. I remember doing New Orleans 70.3 in the lead up to it, and when people told me it was hot and humid, I just imagined it would be going to Spain in the summer or something like that. Oh, it's 30 degrees, that's humid. So going out, I remember going to New Orleans 2 or 3 weeks before it, and I got on and I thought, what the hell is this heat and humidity? I've never experienced anything like it. And I absolutely died on the run. It was the most horrendous experience I've had. And I remember speaking to my mum and dad and girlfriend. And I said, this is absolutely terrible. I said, I don't know if I can race Texas. I've never experienced heat like this. This is I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish the marathon. But being out there for 4 weeks, I knew what I was expecting then because I'd been out in Texas for another 2 or 3 weeks. I think I had about 3 more weeks before the race, and it was hot and humid every day. And I just remember getting onto that run, got off the bike, first place. Everyone was surprised. No one expected it, but I wasn't getting any time splits to the people behind. And I just suffered like a dog for 18 miles until Matt Hansen caught me, put 9 minutes into me to catch me, and then put another 9 minutes into me in the last 9 miles. And it was the most horrendous experience of my life because I needed the money and I needed the result really, really badly. So I was just in that agony. And when he caught me, it was almost like relief because I was digging so deep to hold him off that when he caught me, I knew that I had a buffer to third. And it was like, oh, thank God he's done it now. Right, I can just try and get to the end. But yeah, that was, I've never suffered in a race like that. That was something else.
And you needed that second place, right? You needed to be in terms of to.
Oh yeah, definitely needed it. Yeah. Yeah, so it just shows what you can do when you're desperate.
Love it. Hey, well, Joe, I look forward. We'll see you down in Challenge Daytona. We're gonna be down there doing the show down there. So hopefully we'll catch up there.
Yeah, awesome. I'll see you there. We'll have a beer after.
Joe Skipper has been our guest. Thank you, Joe, for taking time. Breakfast with Bob, not quite Kona edition. We will see you in a few weeks.
Cheers. See you later. Thanks for having me, Bob.